KCB ni yetu. For people, for better.
Get ready for a heartwarming experience like never before on Safer Sunday.
The news that matters the most is the one that hits close to home. When disasters strike, we are there to inform you. When the bullets are flying, we tell you who's shooting and why. Reporting on your victories, your health, your money, your security, your past, present, and future. We are interested in telling the stories of creativity, hard work, and resilience that you are known for. That is our job. This is my job. My name is Victor Moyakane, and it's my honor to bring you this news this way every Thursday night on the Home of Untold Stories.
Katika majengo haya, hapa ndipo sheria zinapotungwa na zinapopakuliwa. Nitakuletea viongozi mbalimbali, mirengo mbalimbali, wote kwa pamoja wakipika na kupakua. Tutawapa nafasi kuweza kuangazia changamoto na mafanikio ya ugatuzi katika ukumbi wa siasa kila siku ya Jumanne kuanzia saa 1 kamili na kuendelea.
Toka eneo hili la Naivasha kwenye kaunti 032, gatuzi la Nakuru.
Kutoka kaunti ya Elgeyo Marakwet, kaunti 028.
Nikiripotia runinga ya TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Wajir.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Turukana.
Kwa matukio yote yanayojiri katika kaunti hii 012.
Kutoka kaunti nambari 1, kaunti ya Mombasa.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Lamu.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka Kisii County.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Machakos.
Kutoka kaunti hii ya Trans Nzoia.
Kaunti 038.
Kutoka gatuzi nambari 029, kaunti ya Nandi, chemichemi ya mabingwa.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Kakamega.
Itakuwa nikiripotia runinga ya TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Bungoma.
Jina langu ni Paula Munio.
Willy Dennis Jiru.
Fabian Kibet.
Mimi ni Hashim Jimal.
Mimi ni Kitio Mika Masai.
John Javakiania.
Jina langu ni Abdulaziz Nameka.
Mimi ni Kombo Alfayo.
Jina langu ni Nicholas Mbai.
Isaac Famba.
Mimi ni Wanji Sosti.
Jina langu ni Arnold Adidi.
Jina langu ni Chris Bet.
Jina langu ni Violet Auma.
Na TV47 inapotamba, mimi Sheila Chelangat nitakuwa nikiripotia maswala yanayokuhusu wewe kila kuchao. Every Thursday 7:30 p.m. unapata nafasi kufahamu viongozi mbalimbali kutoka humu nchini, kuanzia wabunge.
Through Changa we could get money to pay our rent, pay our bills.
When I was growing up, water was a problem where I was born and bred. We wake up at 3 to go and look for water.
Magavana
must be ready to be a tough woman and not a woman to be walked over.
Kwa hivyo
but you respect people.
Dari ya mfahamu kiongozi, story na historia, na mi Elizabeth Mutuku.
Right, thank you so much for staying with us. Time now for HerSay. And even before I introduce you, Madam Ambassador, I must say I'm so excited to be here. I'm glad to be here. Warm, finally. It's been freezing outside.
I'm glad we can warm you up a little bit with the fire.
Oh, yes, the fireplace right here. Thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome.
like I have mentioned before, our conversation tonight is with the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, who is also the first U.S. female ambassador to Kenya. But listen to this, in more than 2 decades, okay? She has a significant experience leading business organizations from startups to multinational corporations, a diplomat, a business executive, and a politician as well. Cushing Whitman. We know her as Meg or Anyango.
Yeah.
You recently acquired that name. Tell us about it.
I did. Well, I was in Home Bay earlier this week, and it was a great reception, and I was, I guess, given the title of the Luau Queen and that name.
Oh, yes, you were crowned the Luau Queen, and you had that whisk there. How was it?
It was great fun. I'm a big admirer of Governor Wanga. She's doing a fantastic job up in Homa Bay, and it is beautiful up there with the lake and the Homa Hills and lots of potential for economic growth and development there.
Most definitely. And I want us to remain there at Homa Bay, because apart from that, you also met frontline healthcare workers. You delivered solar-powered water pumps that will help over 450 women farmers.
Yes, yes. Well, we have something at the embassy called Ambassadors Self-Help Grants, which are relatively small grants, but very targeted to people that it really could make a difference to. So this is about 450 women, as you said, many of whom are widows from men who have died of HIV/AIDS. And so they're organic farmers, and what they really needed was solar-powered pumps, because solar power is basically free, and they didn't have to pay for the electricity. And they really need those pumps for their organic farm. So we were pleased to be able to go up there and hand them the 4 solar-powered pumps.
Sure. And you mentioned HIV/AIDS, and we shall talk about that later on because of that program PEPFAR. Yeah? Yes, sure. We shall talk about that. So apart from Homa Bay, you've been to Kakamega, you've been to Kwale, you've been to Naivasha, you've been to Kiambu. You planted trees at Mwongoya Primary School in Kiambu. You've been to Mombasa, and you learned to stitch at in Ruaraka.
Yes.
Tell us about that. It's been an exciting, I presume, 1 year plus in Kenya.
Yeah, just a little over a year. And I've tried to get out. I think I've been to about 21 counties. Because what I learned in business, and it's true whether you're in an NGO or the government, is the truth is never at headquarters. The truth is out in the field, and you learn the most from being out in the field, talking to people, understanding their issues, understanding what their challenges are. So I've really tried to get out, and it's been so much fun, and I've learned so much. And it's a remarkable country with remarkable, resilient people.
Right. And in Isiolo, you tried the camel milk, and is it Nyuri Nyuri?
I did.
What was your verdict?
Well, I'd never had camel milk before, and I had not had camel yogurt before. But if you've not had it, I recommend you try it. It's delicious.
I'll have the yogurt. I've had the milk.
Yeah.
I'm yet to have the yogurt.
It's delicious. And they have strawberry yogurt and flavored yogurt. And it's run largely by a women's cooperative. And, they bring the camel milk in through all parts of the day. They pasteurize it and then sell it. And they've got a nice little business there.
How about the camel meat, the Nyuri Nyuri?
Yes, yes. The camel milk?
Yes,
yes.
The meat, the camel
meat. Oh, the meat.
Yes.
I don't think I had meat. Well, no, actually, that's true. I did have meat. It was dried. Yes, it was dried. It was, and it was quite good, actually. It's quite crunchy and chewy, and I liked it. Yes, I recall. It's at the same place. They have it packaged in plastic bags, and it's terrific.
All right. So let me take you back now to where it all started, and this is where I want us to talk about the Meg of Long Island in New York. Yeah? What was your childhood like?
Yeah. Well, I'm the youngest of 3. I have an older brother and an older sister. My dad worked in New York City. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And I think had she been born in a different generation, she might have had a different kind of a career outside the home.
Why do you say that?
Well, she was very ambitious. She was very smart. And she wanted to do things, but the opportunities for women were relatively limited. But she did serve in the United States military for, she was in the Red Cross during World War II. She went to New Guinea for 4 years, where she became a certified airplane mechanic and a certified truck mechanic. Wow. So I think in a different time, in a different place, it would have been interesting to see what she did. But really a nice growing up. Went to high school in Long Island, and then I was just the first class of women to go to Princeton, the fourth class of women to go to Princeton, which had been all male for 250 years.
Impressive. And you speak so highly of your mother. You really are proud of her.
Yeah. Well, she was a great mom, and you know, moms have such influence on kids. I bet your mom had a huge influence on you.
Mama, you do.
And you know, she told my sister and my brother and me that we could do anything we wanted. And she gave us confidence, and she gave us the ability to try things and not worry about if we failed or if something bad happened. So, you know, she was truly an inspiration for us.
Your Excellency, what did you want to be, you know, when you grow up? Because we all have, like here in Kenya, back in the day, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, but I ended up as someone different or in a different profession. How was it like for you? Did you want to be who you are today?
No, I didn't really. I was, for a while, I really wanted to be an astronaut because I was about 15 years old when we put the first man on the moon. And that was an incredibly inspiring experience. I remember exactly where I was, and I remember thinking, wow, this is amazing. But I've always been interested in science and math, and so then I thought maybe I wanted to be a doctor. So I went to college wanting to be a doctor.
You actually did go to college?
Wanting to be a doctor.
Yes.
Yes, and so I took biology and chemistry and physics, and then I took organic chemistry. And that is, in America, that course is designed to weed out the people who really aren't serious. And I took that course and I said, you know what? I think maybe I should think about something else. And then that summer I got a job selling advertising. And I said, well, this is kind of like business. And so I majored in economics. And then, you know, went on to have a business career.
Right, right. Beyond that, of course, again, I know you mentioned your mother, but you are a wife, you are a mother, you are a grandmother. Yes, you are. Take us through that.
Yeah. So I met my husband when he was at Harvard Medical School and I was at Harvard Business School. We met through my sister. She introduced us.
And I want you to talk to us about that. I really do. I know there's a very interesting story.
Well, we were actually undergraduates, and we met briefly. My sister said, you should come up and meet this, you know, Griff. My husband's name is Griff. You should meet him because he's just down the hall from me, and I think you're going to like him. So we met, but then he was off to England. I went back to school, but when I arrived at Harvard Business School, he was back doing Harvard Medical School. And my sister invited him to her wedding. And I wrote on the invitation, yes, you should definitely come to the wedding. And what happened was his brother was in town and they ended up going out to dinner. And about 11 o'clock, he looked at his watch and he said, there was something I was supposed to do tonight.
Goodness.
And he did not show up for the wedding.
He stood you up?
He stood me up.
Oh,
and
Lord.
the next day he called and he said, you know, there's 6 or 8 things we could do together. I want to give you all the choice. I'm so sorry. And I was like, I don't know. But then I said, okay, I'll give him another chance, because he was pretty cute.
Oh. Is he hearing us? I hope he had that. Yeah, but your sister had something else planned in case he completely failed to show up?
Well, there was, you know, I think 150 people at the wedding, so it was just one person who was missing. So it was all fine. There were lots of young people there.
Right.
So it was a wonderful wedding. And I did notice he didn't show up, but I thought, well, you know, things happen.
Right. Okay. And of course, you've brought him up, or I did. I asked you about him, and I am aware that you relocated to Kenya together.
Yes.
Could you talk to us about that?
Yes. So my husband's a neurosurgeon, a brain surgeon, and he was most recently chairman of the Department of Neurosurgery at the University of California in Davis, which is just a bit north of San Francisco. So he ran the neurosurgery department there. But he was, you know, he was game, and we've traded off each other's careers over time. You know, we used to laugh that no sooner does one of us, you know, get a career going than the other one has a different idea. And so we used to say we sabotaged each other's careers. But he was very game to come. And so we just arrived together August 1st, a year ago. He's doing 2 NIH grants here. And he's working with a couple of the hospitals here, teaching neurosurgery residents.
What did it mean to you that, you know, he opted or he chose to come and stay with you here?
Well, it means a lot, right? I mean, you always need a supportive significant other or spouse, and we've really supported each other over the years. Sometimes I've moved for him, sometimes he's moved for me, and so I think maybe the next time is going to be his turn.
Oh, yes. Your turn.
Well, this was my turn. I think or maybe our next job will be he may figure out what he wants to do next.
Sure. All right. Let's talk about some of the activities that you two love doing together, especially here in Kenya. hiking, for instance.
Yeah. No, we're big hikers, and we've hiked the Nagang Hills 3 or 4 times. From you start, right underneath the windmills, and you go up the 7 hills and end up at the other side. We've hiked Mount Longonot, which was really fun. We didn't go all the way around the crater. We just hiked up to the top, but we're planning to go all the way around the crater. We've, when we, go out to the Mara or to Barana or Lewa Downs, we'll often do walking safaris. And so we love to walk and we love to hike. And it's a great, I took a look at those Homa Hills when I was at Homa Bay, and I said to the governor, I said, can you hike these? Are there walking trails? And she said, no. And I said, well, you should create them, because we would be there.
And she had you. Right. I want to know more about, him in terms of the role that he's played in your life. And I'm asking this because I am aware that, you've mentioned him in your 2010 book, The Power of Many.
Yes.
So what other role has he played in your life journey?
Well, my husband has been a tremendous support. The most important decision you make is who you decide to partner up with.
That's true.
It really is the most important decision. And you make it when you're very young. I got married when I was 23. So, you're making these life decisions, and you look back now and you think, gee, did I really have enough knowledge to make that decision? But we've been married 42 years, actually 43 this summer. And he's been a tremendous support. And we have 2 boys, who are now 38 and 35. And with both of us working, we had to figure out who was going to be at home, who was going to be at home at dinner every night, who was going to go to the football game or the basketball game, or who was going to take them to, their summer camp. And so we've really split the duties pretty much down the middle. Sometimes one does more than the other. And households do not run themselves, right? The groceries don't get bought by themselves. The house doesn't get cleaned by itself. When you have guests over, that doesn't organize itself. So, sometimes it takes 2 to get it done.
And your grandkids, we did mention them, but we didn't talk about them.
I have 3 grandkids, 2 boys and a girl. The oldest one will be 5 this coming summer. The next one will be 3 in about 2 days. And then there's a little girl who's just 1 at the end of November.
What kind of grandma are you?
Well, it's so fun. I think I'm quite an indulgent grandmother. I was more of a disciplinarian with my children, but when they're your grandchildren,
why is it always like that?
Well, because they're so adorable.
Is it the same with all women?
They're so adorable, and they're not. You can always give them back.
I like that.
And when they're crying or they're too tired or whatever, you don't have to deal. You just hand them back to their mom and dad. So it's actually the best job in the world. It's really fun, and it's really one of the only things I miss about being in Kenya is they're in New York, so we don't see them as much as we would if we lived in the States.
Do they come to visit? It's only been a year plus.
They haven't yet, and think about taking 3 children under the age of 5 on a 20-hour flight to Kenya. It seems like a lot. So we'll see. I think my 2 sons will come, and maybe my son and his wife will come. But I think it's a big trip for 3 children under the age of 5.
That's true. Let's come back to you. Transitioning now to Kenya, and I know you've spoken about this before, but how is it like? You came on August 1st last year, just days to the general election. How is it like now getting used or settling here in Kenya?
Well, it was a big change for us because I had never been a diplomat. I'm not a career foreign service officer. I'm a business person. So this was the first time I'd ever worked for the United States government. It's the first time we've ever lived outside the United States. So living in any country that is not your own takes some adjustment.
That's right.
And then I arrived here and the elections were August 9th. So it was a little bit of, wow, I have to get up to speed really quickly. And but in some ways that was good because I met a lot of people. I was at the BOMAS.
Yes.
And
yes, you were.
That was a real challenge, but I met more people in that 24-hour period than I when I was there than I would have met in probably 3 or 4 months. And it was an excellent introduction to Kenya.
Great. And on Kenya, and we shall talk about your experience in the tech industry, but based on that, on the back of that, M-Pesa.
Yes.
I know you've talked about it so much in almost all your speeches, but do you use it?
Oh, yes,
you
absolutely, yes. I mean, M-Pesa is really remarkable, and I know something about the payments business because when I was the CEO of eBay, we bought a company called PayPal. So I know a lot about digital payments. And when I understood the power of M-Pesa, that nearly 60% of Kenya's GDP flows through M-Pesa. Everyone uses M-Pesa. pay, people that you buy something from on the side of the road. You go to Carrefour, everywhere. I mean, it is universally accepted. And the amazing thing is it has really, I think 95 or 98% of the people in Kenya have M-Pesa.
That's
and
right.
so they're banked in some ways. And that has, I think, made a big difference. And it's very different than America. We solved e-commerce before payments. Kenya did the reverse. Kenya figured out payments, and now you're starting to see some of these e-commerce companies come up. So I think there's quite a bright future in tech broadly here in what you call Silicon Savannah, which I love.
And we shall talk more about that, especially when we get to eBay. By the way, so many people want to know about your experience at eBay. We shall get to that. But Your Excellency, this is HerSay. And like I said, it's a show for the women, by the women, by a woman, for the women. And I want us to talk about what it takes to be this phenomenal woman leader that you are, who has not just established a name for herself in her country, but beyond, globally. I mean, who doesn't know Meg Whitman?
Oh, you're nice. Thank you. Well, I think it takes a number of things. One, first of all, it takes a lot of hard work, right? And there is virtually no one who has done a good job in their career. I bet you work really hard, right? You work really hard. People, you have to work really hard. And you have to be resilient because everyone has setbacks. And so you have to be able to dust yourself off and get up and try again. And then I think a lot of it is really learning from other people. Business and your business and government, it's an apprenticeship business. And this is the worry I have about work from home that happened during COVID. Because you learn by watching. I learned by watching people who were senior to me. I watched how they conducted themselves in a meeting. I watched how they conducted business. And so it's being very attuned to who you can learn from, having your own moral compass, your own sense of what is right, and then working really hard. And that's really how I've done it. And by the way, there's some luck too. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than smart. And I've had my fair share of luck.
But how much more did it take you to, get to where you are as a woman? Because someone said it's like we start at Neil 1, the men having a 1 in us, Neil.
Well, I think it is largely true, although I think it's changing, that we actually have to work harder than the men. I know that in my early stages of my career, I think most of the women worked harder than the men. And sometimes it's a big challenge because I know that for me, with my 2 children and my husband, the weekends were pretty sacrosanct. I was really with my husband and children on the weekends, and a lot of times during the week. And a lot of my male colleagues were doing things with other guys on the weekends, whether it was playing football or playing golf or doing these things. We weren't part of that. So our network at these companies wasn't as strong. And so you just have to stand on your own. I think the other thing I learned was that as you're coming up in an organization, I think a lot of people, if there's 2 people who are equally talented, they take the one who's optimistic. They take the one who has a glass half full, who is enthusiastic. Enthusiasm goes a long way. And people who come to you with a problem, but also a solution, as opposed to here's the problem, here's all the things that are wrong. People who come to you and say, here's what's wrong, but here's what I recommend you do about it, you go, okay, that's someone I want to work with. That's someone I want to promote.
And you are a defender of women's rights, because allow me to read this. In 1979, when you were at P&G in the Cincinnati office, you stood up, against a policy that the company had that it wouldn't issue credit cards to its women trainees because they simply didn't think it was safe for women to travel alone.
That's exactly right. There were 100 of us in the sort of entering class. It was back in the day where you all started at the same time, and we all started in marketing. And 96 out of 100, well, there were 4 women out of a class of 100. Think about that.
Goodness.
And 96 of the class got credit cards, company credit cards, and the 4 women did not. And we went up to the fellow who was teaching this orientation session at the end, and we said, I'm sure there's been some mistake, but the 4 of us women didn't get cards. And he said, I know. It's because we're worried about you traveling by yourself. And we said, well, that's a little bit of a problem because we got to go check the shelves. We have to go sell to the stores. We have to stock the shelves. And he said, I know. And so we wrote letters all the way up to the CEO of the company. And when it finally got to the CEO, he said, this is crazy. If we've hired these women, we have to enable them to do their job. Give them the credit cards. And so, but we worked within the system change it.
Right. And coming home now to Kenya, I'm aware of a program by the U.S. Embassy, Got What It Takes to Be Ambassador for the Day?
Yes, yeah. Yes.
Tell us about it.
So it's Ambassador for a Day, and we take applications from young women all over the country. And we had our first one earlier this year, and it was fantastic. She works in a plant regeneration kind of a company, and she was super smart, and I think she just thought it was really, really fun. So again, it's a little bit role modeling. You know, I have a phrase, if you can see it, you can be it. And so she saw a number of senior women leaders at the embassy, and I think that gave her a sense of, okay, like I can actually move up in my company. I can do things that maybe I didn't think I could do before. Role models are really important. People need to be able to see people that look like them and sound like them, and they go, okay, I can do that.
Right. If you can see it, you can be it.
Yes.
And there's so many quotes by you, Your Excellency, never compromise your integrity.
Yes.
Problems are good as long as you solve them quickly. Remember that? If you have fun at your job, I think you're going to be more effective. And there's one that I like, which is actually my mantra too. Do what you love and success will follow. Passion is the fuel behind a successful career.
Yes.
What's the inspiration behind all this?
Well, think about how much time we spend at work. We spend probably more time at work than we do at home. And so I think that's really important to do something that you like. And I think we're all better when you do something that you like. And so I always encourage young people to find what their passion is. I mean, is it sports? Is it fashion? Is it technology? Is it medicine? Is it law? Is it law enforcement? What is it that really makes you excited? And go do that. And don't let, you know, your friends or your parents or whatever say, oh yes, but we really want you to be an X.
Right.
You know, and you, by the way, you don't have to figure it out right away. There can be 2 or 3 jobs that you get out of high school or out of college.
Most definitely. And you know what I say? Know what you want and go for it, which is pretty much the same thing you're saying, Your Excellency.
Yes.
Okay, and at this point, we take a short break here on HerSay. Stay with us. We shall come back with this conversation with the U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, Meg Whitman.
The news that matters the most is the one that hits close to home. When disasters strike, we are there to inform you. When the bullets are flying, we tell you who's shooting and why. Reporting on your victories, your health, your money, your security, your past, present, and future. We are interested in telling the stories of creativity, hard work, and resilience that you are known for. That is our job. This is my job. My name is Victor Muyakane, and it's my honor to bring you this news this way every Thursday night on the Home of Untold Stories.
Katika majengo haya, hapa ndipo sheria zinapotungwa na zinapopakuliwa. Nitakuletea viongozi mbalimbali, mirengo mbalimbali, wote kwa pamoja wakipika na kupakua. Tutawapa nafasi kuweza kuangazia changamoto na mafanikio ya ugatuzi katika ukumbi wa siasa kila siku ya Jumanne kuanzia saa 1 kamili na kuendelea.
Toka eneo hili la Naivasha kwenye kaunti 032, gatuzi la Nakuru.
Kutoka kaunti ya Elgeyo Marakwet, kaunti 028.
Nikiripotia runinga ya TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Wajir.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Turkana.
Kwa matukio yote yanayojiri katika kaunti hii 012.
Kutoka kaunti nambari 1, kaunti ya Mombasa.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Lamu.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka Kisii County.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Machakos.
Kutoka kaunti hii ya Trans Nzoia.
Kaunti 038.
kutoka gatuzi nambari 029 kaunti ya Nandi, chemichemi ya mabingwa.
Nikiripotia TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Kakamega.
Nitakuwa nikiripotia runinga ya TV47 kutoka kaunti ya Bungoma.
Jina langu ni Paula Munio.
Willy Dennis Jiru.
Fabian Kibet.
Mimi ni Hashim Jimal.
Mimi ni Kitio Mika Masai.
John Javakiania.
Jina langu ni Abdulaziz Nameka.
Mimi ni Kombo Alfayo.
Jina langu ni Nicholas Mbai.
Isaac Famba.
Mimi ni Wanji Sosti.
Jina langu ni Arnold Adidi.
Jina langu ni Chris Bet.
Jina langu ni Violet Auma.
Na TV47 inapotamba, mimi Sheila Chelangat nitakuwa nikiripotia maswala yanayokuhusu wewe kila kuchao. Every Thursday 7:30 p.m. unapata nafasi kufahamu viongozi mbalimbali kutoka humu nchini, kuanzia wabunge.
Through Changa, we could get money to pay our rent, to pay our bills.
When I was growing up, water was a problem where I was born and bred. We wake up at 3 to go and look for water.
Magavana
must be ready to be a tough woman and not a woman to be walked over.
Kwa hivyo
but you respect people.
Dadi ya mfahamu kiongozi.
Right. Thank you once again for staying with us. We continue with the conversation we've been having on HerSay tonight with the U.S. Ambassador to Kenya, Meg Whitman. And I see your questions, by the way, in your feedback. I shall be sampling it and posing some of the questions that you have to the Ambassador who is here with us tonight. Keep them coming, okay? TV47 News on X, TV47 Kenya Facebook, Grace Korea KE on Twitter, on X, okay? Your Excellency, let's talk business now, and particularly eBay, which, like I said before, so many people want to know about it because Meg Whitman is known best for taking eBay from $4 million in sales to $4 million in sales to $8 billion in sales. That is in a span of 10 years, 1998 to 2008. What does it take to be this successful in business?
Well, first of all, I think it takes picking the right industry, and also we were at the dawn of the internet. In 1998, it's hard to remember, but we were barely doing email in 1998, and e-commerce was entirely new, and eBay was an entirely unique concept. Prior to eBay, if you were a collector of items, because collectibles were the first thing, you had to go to a local store, and your trading area was just in your village or your town. All of a sudden, the world was your shop, and you could sell to anyone across the globe, across the United States, and you could buy. And so it made fundamentally an inefficient market efficient. So it was a really good idea, and we executed that idea very, very well.
What did it take to execute it?
Well, it takes, first of all, you got to be fast, because the market, the company was growing at 70% compound monthly growth rate, which meant the company was 70% bigger in February than it was in January.
Sure.
And so you had to be fast, and you had to figure out, it was all new. And so you had to figure things out very quickly. And like every other business, you know, I was able to get a great team around me. You know, you're only as good as your team.
That's true.
And we managed the financials of the company very well. We were focused on profitability early, and we had an obsession with the customer. And the customers, in a funny way, they had all the really good ideas on eBay. And I'll tell you one story. Mostly at the beginning, it was collectibles. And one day, a young man came running into my cubicle. We sat in cubicles, and he said, Meg, they're selling cars on eBay. I said, they're not selling cars on eBay. They're selling those little die-cast cars that people collect and little children play with.
Yes.
And he said, no, Meg, today there's 200 cars for sale on eBay. And I said, well, the least we can do is give them a category. And all of a sudden, in about a year's time, eBay was selling more used cars than all the used car dealers in America combined.
That's huge.
But it was the idea of a user. We didn't sit in a conference room and say, hey, how about we think about selling cars on eBay? It came from a user, and that's the lesson.
Right. And how does Meg Whitman deal with criticism? I'm asking this because I came across an article written, from way back, those past years, just before you joined HP, Hewlett Packard. Hewlett, that's the correct pronunciation, as CEO, so the article actually read, Whitman as the HP CEO should have a tough job. Did you actually see it? I don't know. But how do you deal with criticism?
Well, there's been a lot written about me over many years, and not all of it is good. And so you get a bit of a thick skin, particularly when you run for office, and I know we'll talk about that.
Yes, definitely.
But even as the CEO of a company, you get criticized. As the ambassador to Kenya, you get criticized. And over time, you get a little bit used to it. You listen to it to make sure there's not something you should learn from it. And then you just make sure that you sort of keep yourself centered. And when I was in politics, I just stopped reading the articles because it actually doesn't help you. It shatters your confidence. And I knew that my team would tell me if there was something I needed to know, but I just couldn't read the articles. And you know what you should never read is the comments. Never read the comments.
I agree.
It is brutal. And by the way, it's not a representative sample, and it just, I think it throws you off your game.
I totally agree. Even for us as journalists and news anchors, some people sometimes say the most terrible of things. And it's better just to not read it.
Because it doesn't help you. It doesn't make you better. It makes you feel badly about yourself and bitter.
Sure, bitter. Okay, how do you deal with certain challenges? And I'm asking this on the back of when you were CEO, Florist's transport delivery.
Yeah. So that was a job that I actually got dismissed from. And, it was my first CEO job. And what I did is I really did turn around this company, but I didn't hit the business plan that the venture capitalists and the private equity firms had decided that they thought this company could do. And so it was a good lesson where, one day we the senior partner at this private equity firm said, I don't think this is the right job for you. And I said, you know what? I hear you, I understand, and I learned a lot from that job. You know that old saying, you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes? I think that's true. And I think the thing I really didn't understand at FTD was it was a member-owned association. So it was not owned by shareholders. The company was owned by other florists. And florists did business with FTD for reasons other than economics. It was connecting over a shared area of interest. Their families grew up together. They felt like a family. And we treated it more like a business than like family. And it was a pretty good lesson to say, you know what? You always have to understand the dynamics of your customer base. So it was a good learning experience for me. And, I said, what's the worst thing that can happen? I'll just go get another job. And I did.
And you did.
And I did.
You did. Let's talk about something that you termed a very tough business.
Yes.
I think you know what I'm talking about. Politics.
Yes.
Yes. Why did you decide to get into the murky world of politics?
Well, I was inspired by two people. One was Mitt Romney, who you might know ran for president of the United States. He was also governor of Massachusetts, and now he's a senator from Utah. And he was my boss at Bain & Company for 10 years. And I really admired him. And when I watched him go into politics, he went into politics for the good of the country. It wasn't about him. He thought he could help the country. And I admired that a lot. And I said, you know what? After I'm finished my business career, maybe I can do something like that as well. And then I also worked on John McCain's campaign. And John had a phrase called country first. Not John McCain first, country first. And he believed it. He was a naval aviator. He believed it with all his heart. And I was inspired by both of them. So when I finally finished at eBay after 10 years, I decided to run for governor of California. And I thought I could actually help California, which needed quite a bit of help at the time.
Yeah, but because that didn't happen, I mean, what did that experience teach you?
It was pretty brutal.
Tell me about it. Tell me more.
Politics, and I think it's true in Kenya, it's definitely true in the United States, it's a full-on combat sport. It's like fighting all the time. And you have your opponent to deal with, you have the press to deal with, and a lot is going on, and I was new to politics. So I found it to be very difficult because I am at my core not confrontational. I don't like to fight. And there's a reason in the United States that many people are litigators. They're used to arguing. And the press, probably not here, the press says up. You say up, and the press says down. But if you had said down, they would have said up. So it wasn't about the right answer. And that was hard for me because in business, you're always about the right answer. And so it took me a while to figure it out. I'll tell you one other thing I learned is that in business, you talk about numbers, revenues, costs, return on invested capital. In politics, it's actually not about the facts and the figures, it's about the stories you tell. It's about inspiring large groups of people. It's about building coalitions. And those were skills that I didn't have because I'd not done it before. So again, I learned a ton. And really gave me an appreciation for politicians. And we should be glad that anyone wants to run for public office because it's really hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done.
And now that you definitely know more, I don't know, any political ambitions, perhaps follow the steps of Kamala Harris, for instance?
No, I think my career in elected politics is over. I made a good run at it. I learned a lot. And I think I might have been a pretty good governor. I don't think I was a very good candidate. And today, at least in the United States, someone who's a good candidate may or may not be as good a president. And so I think I was not a good candidate. I might have been a good governor, but we'll never know.
Let's talk about your current job now.
Yes.
What's the most fun part of it?
Yeah. Well, I think getting to know Kenya. That has been the most fun. And getting to know Kenyan people and seeing entrepreneurs and people who are really making a difference to children or people with HIV or whatever. It's such a wonderful patchwork of people and cultures here in many ways. So that's been the most fun. And then I think the other fun is that I think Kenya has so much potential. And in my view, a very important priority is economic growth and development because the population is going to double between now and 2050.
That's true.
There's already youth unemployment, underemployed people, and so the ability to help Kenya attract foreign direct investment and help Kenya create good private sector jobs that pay a good wage and have some benefits associated with it. It's really fun and it's satisfying, and I think we're making some progress. We'll see.
I'll ask you a question you asked President William Ruto at the Silicon Valley, that was during the US-Kenya Business Roadshow. You asked him what he is most proud of in his job and how hard it is. And I want to ask you that.
Yeah, what am I most proud of?
Yes.
I think I'm probably most proud of what we're trying to do from an economic growth job perspective. So we put together this, well, first of all, let me back up. I think one of the challenges that Africa has and Kenya has is that the narrative on Africa in the United States is about 20 years old. People in America don't understand the dynamic continent. They don't understand what people are doing here. They don't understand the opportunity. And that's because when you live in America, Europe is closer by, Latin America is right there. Asia has been such an important trading partner that I have said this many times. I thought about Africa about 1% of the time when I was running HP and eBay. And if I knew what I knew now, I would have a very different point of view. So we've worked hard to try to change the narrative. And we put together a presentation called Why Africa? Why Kenya? Why invest in Africa and why Kenya should be your destination? And that's starting to change minds. I think here in Kenya, I've had Kenyans come up to me and say, we didn't even know that about our country. And I think it's really starting to change some minds in the United States. And that will lead to more foreign direct investment and more jobs.
Right.
So I'm proud of that.
Right. And in most of your speeches, Your Excellency, you say, or one of the reasons that you give for why Kenya is that it has the most stable democracy.
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Well, I think everyone would have to say it's at least one of the most stable democracies in all of Africa. There's been a lot of changes over the last couple of years. You see what's happened in Sudan. There's fighting in the DRC. There's all kinds of challenges in military coups. And yet Kenya continues to grow and has put together an impressive track record. So I do think if you're going to think about investing, Kenya has to be on your short list of places that you would look at.
But there is a statement you made at the Devolution Conference.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about, yeah?
Yes.
And it rattled some quarters, among them Azimio leader or the opposition leader, Raila Odinga, who asked you to keep off Kenyan affairs. I mean, did you expect such backlash?
Well, as I said, I'm used to criticism. And what I said is many people have said this was the freest, fairest election in Kenyan history. And that happens to be true. Many people have said that. And I think Kenya should be proud of the fact that there wasn't violence associated with this election, that there was a peaceful transfer of power. And just like in the United States, there's people who think that's not how the election really went. But I think most people would probably agree that this was certainly a violent-free election and was a peaceful transfer of power. And that's important. You have to remember this presentation is for foreign investors. And foreign investors want to know that where they're going is stable. The last thing they want to do is be in the middle of something they didn't anticipate. So stability is an important part. And what that presentation I made at the Devolution Conference was effectively the same exact presentation that I made in America on our 4 different road shows.
Right. But then again, how did you deal with it, say, on a personal level? Because it did explode. I mean, it made the headlines. We saw the president, of course, defending you. How did you deal with it?
Well, to tell you the truth, I was surprised, because I didn't actually anticipate that, because I didn't think that what I said was particularly controversial. And then I understood that, probably many people at that conference thought it was quite controversial. And so I said, you know what, we'll learn from this. If I had to do it again, would I say it slightly differently? I might.
How would you say it?
Well, you might just say that, I don't know. I think you might just say that a lot of people did feel that this was an excellent election, which is kind of what I said.
Yeah.
But I suppose I could have just not said anything at all, right? I could have just gone right into why Kenya. But I thought it was important, and again, it was the speech that I had given in America many times.
So is that a regret?
And no regrets at all. I think I did the right thing. I think I said what I believed, and that's okay too.
Right. Okay. I want us to talk about some of the milestones under your tenure in as far as the U.S.-Kenya trade and investment relationship is concerned.
Yes. Well, I think there was a lot of momentum, before I got here, so I can't take credit for everything by far. I think a lot of things were really headed in the right direction. Kenya has done a good job of taking advantage of AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunities Act. In fact, in 2022, the U.S. was Kenya's largest export market. I think now Uganda is now number 1. Uganda was 1, then America was 1, and now Uganda is 1. But we're certainly in the top 2 trading partners for Kenya. And that's largely due to AGOA, where goods from Kenya enter the United States without tariffs. And so it's a free market, it's an open market, and that's important. So I think, if you think about apparel, you think about macadamia nuts, you think about dried fruits, those kinds of things are all now quite big exports. I think it's about $600 million of exports to the United States every year.
Let's talk about Kenya's foreign policy.
Yes.
Because we are dining with the UAE, with China, with Russia, with the US. But does that in any way affect the relations between US, the United States, and Kenya?
Not really. I mean, what our objective is to give Kenya choices. If you want to build a road, who do you want to build it with? If you want to do an apparel company or apparel factory, who do you want to do it with? And so we want to give Kenya those choices. I'm very proud of the 60-year relationship that we have had with Kenya. We have worked very closely around counter-terrorism, about military cooperation. We've worked very closely on health, most notably on HIV/AIDS through the PEPFAR program. We've worked very closely on alleviating some of the food insecurity that occurred during the drought. So the partnership between Kenya and the United States, I think, is very strong. And that doesn't mean it can't be strong between Kenya and other countries. And in fact, that Why Africa, Why Kenya presentation, there's no trademark on that. And I was just talking to the ambassador from South Korea, and he said, I took that presentation and I translated into Korean. Wow. And I said, yes, that's exactly what we want. The more people that tell the Kenya story and the Africa story, I think the better off we are.
Sure. And, when we put it out that we're having this conversation tonight, a lot of people were concerned about and you mentioned matters counterterrorism, but they're travel advisories that are usually issued by the U.S. Embassy against Kenya. I mean, the most recent one on July 31st, and there was a security alert issued on October 13th. So the question is, what is the criteria to issuing a travel advisory against Kenya?
So obviously we see all kinds of threats coming into both the Kenyan team as well as the U.S. team. And when things rise to a certain level, we feel like we need to remind Americans in Kenya to be thoughtful. And you know, what happens over time is that people forget. You know, there's 30,000 Americans living in Kenya, and they love it here. They are very much part of the culture, and they forget sometimes that they need to be careful. And you probably should be careful all the time, anywhere. And so part of this is we see, you know, a certain level of threat, and we say, you know what, this is a good time to remind Americans living in Kenya to be thoughtful and to be careful.
But doesn't that work against us, against Kenya?
You know, I think if I was the Kenyans, I would never want those security alerts, but it's better to alert people and to make sure they're careful as opposed to people getting hurt, because that would be even worse, I think.
And there's a question here from one of our viewers. He asks it in Swahili. I'll read it as is and expound. Uliza, mbona wa Kenya wengi wananyimwa visa? I know this was on your entry, the visa issues, and of course the waiting period for the visa interviews has of course been cut by 5 months, but you could answer him. His name is Ngule Juma. He's asking why it takes, actually kunyimwa. Kunyimwa is denied, being denied a visa.
Well, first of all, there's I have to say I'm so proud of our consular office. When I came here, it was 2 years to get an interview even for a visa to come to the United States. And we made a few changes. One is if you'd had a visa in the last 5 years, you could renew online without having to come in for an interview. And then we've really worked hard to increase the throughput and the processing of visas. But there will always be people who are denied for a whole variety of reasons. And I don't know what his story is or if he was denied.
Right.
But you know, if you've been involved in criminal activity, if you have overstayed a visa, you went to the United States and your visa was for 6 months or a year, and you came back 3 years later, that disqualifies you from getting another visa. If there's been any, you know, terrorist activity or money laundering activity, we deny people because our job is to keep, you know, let the good people come to America and make sure we don't have, you know, people who are going to try to do America harm. And you have to know that we're even more sensitive about this since 9/11.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, you know, we're trying to be fair, and we just try to be even-handed about it, but sometimes things in people's background disqualifies them.
Most definitely. And as we wrap up, Your Excellency, let's switch gears and talk HIV/AIDS. I know I did say we shall talk about that, and of course this is ahead of the World AIDS Day on December 1st, and I know the Embassy is sharing 20 stories of 20 lives transformed under PEPFAR. Take us through that.
Yes. Well, this is the 20th anniversary of PEPFAR, and we should go all the way back to 20 years ago where HIV/AIDS was, you know, really had threatened the entire African continent.
Right.
Someone told me, I was not here at the time, but someone told me that people were dying so rapidly that one of the biggest industries was the coffin industry. And then you think now, today, yes, there are people living with HIV or AIDS, but they are virally suppressed. They're living good lives. They're, you know, family members and mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers. And it has been one of the great success stories, I think, between America and, frankly, the African continent. So this year is just 20 years to celebrate. And so we found 20 people whose lives had been changed, whether they were able to have a baby even though they were, you know, HIV positive, or they were able to get married. And and they, you know, were able to do all these different things because of the PEPFAR partnership between Kenya and the United States. And it's been a remarkably successful program.
Right.
We have more work to do, obviously, but it's been amazing.
Most definitely. Again, as we wrap up, what would you want or do you want your legacy to be at the end of your tenure as a U.S. ambassador to Kenya?
Yeah. Well, I think first is to continue to strengthen the partnership between Kenya and the United States on all dimensions. I think secondly, to see if I've been able to really help the economic growth and development of Kenya and bring more foreign direct investment here to help Kenya create more good jobs. Obviously, we continue to help on food insecurity and gender-based violence and all of those things which are so important to the relationship. But if we can, really accelerate economic growth between Kenya and the United States, that would be a legacy I'd be proud of.
Right, okay. And this is where we ended, but I'm going to do something that we did not discuss, Your Excellency, because when you were in a Homa Bay, you said this is the greatest fun you've ever had, dancing. And I want you to show me a move that you learned. We didn't plan this, but you have to as we wrap up.
Well, as you know, the people in Homa Bay like to dance. And so it was a dinner for 60 people, and at the end of dinner, 60 people got on the dance floor, which I have not seen happen in Kenya. It doesn't happen in the United States either. So we were all dancing. And you would like to see a move?
Oh, yes,
well,
yes.
I don't really have
I actually want you to show me what you learned.
Well, I didn't actually learn. Well, it was fun because we were all, in a circle. Everyone was holding hands in a big circle, and then people would go into the middle. And it was just fun to watch people do what they did. And, there was just all these different interesting moves. I mean, all the guys were, and they were doing, going doing deep into their knees.
Oh, wow.
Which for 67-year-old knees are a little bit hard. Yeah. But it was a lot of that, and then, doing sort of twirling and things like that. So it was really fun.
You had so much fun there.
It was fun.
Luo Queen, Anyango.
Thank you.
Right, okay, and that's where we ended. Thank you so much for your time and your company. Thank you so much once again, Your Excellency, for having us. Thank you to the entire crew that made this production a success. My name is Grace Kuriakanja. I'll see you again tomorrow. Good night. Thank you.